Hello, everyone. This is Adlane Fellah, Chief Analyst at Maravidis Research. It's my great pleasure to welcome today Justin Lampman, who's the Chief Operating Officer at 123net. Hello, Justin. How are you today?
Excellent. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. And this is the first time we speak, so it's great to have you. By the way, folks, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. I always forget to mention that in my YouTube channel, but I think it's important. So let's start by asking you, Justin, tell us about 123net.
Yeah, 123net's a telecommunications provider based out of Southfield, Michigan. We're a Michigan company with a mission statement to build network to make Michigan communities and businesses the best connected on the planet. And we do that by building fiber networks. We have some fixed wireless network, and then we have data centers throughout the state. Primarily, we started off as a B2B commercial business, but in the last few years, we've expanded into residential. So we now have fiber to the home for single family units in a variety of our footprint and also a variety of MDU spaces as well.
All right, cool. So tell us, what are your top three business challenges right now?
Yeah, I'd say one of the constant challenges that we have is just growth, right? As we've grown quite a bit over the last, I'd say, 5 to 10 years, and that always comes with some challenges, but there's sort of good challenges to have, right? Expanding, employee base, expanding fiber base and customer base. So, that's probably number one there. Another thing that comes along with growth is making sure that you have all the right tools, software tools, and the back end to help support all those new employees and new customers. And then the third one is, as we've gone into the residential space, we're sort of developing some new services, right? And also participating in grant programs for the first time. And there's been quite a few grants in the state of Michigan that we've been participated in and had won some opportunity to build out in rural areas, which has been, a lot of fun, but, certainly a challenge and a different way to build than we're used to.
Yeah, I mean, those are some good problems to have for sure. Now we're obviously living a very uncertain political context. What impact do you expect these new tariffs to have in your business?
Yeah, we're a service business at our core, right, which helps insulate us from some of that, but we still need materials to build new network, which is a huge part of our business, right? So there's some consideration there for how much our material costs are going to go up based on these tariffs, but there's a lot of uncertainty around what equipment or materials may or may not be affected. I would say though that the telecommunications industry as a whole is perhaps less affected than other industries, just because of a lot of our raw materials that we need to build fiber conduit structures like handholds and fiber have really been making a move towards being built in the US due to some upcoming grant opportunities, primarily BEAD, which requires that equipment that's used in that build be what they call BABA compliant, which is Build America, Buy America. So a lot of these manufacturers have been onshoring manufacturing in order to prepare for that, which helps insulate them from these tariffs. Now, general market volatility can affect raw materials, and there's some other considerations there. But I think all in all, we don't know for sure what the effects will be, but we think we're perhaps less set up to be less affected than certain other industries.
Okay. Cool. All right. My next question, we cover a lot the wireless LAN aspects of the industry, specifically Wi-Fi. When you hear vendor lock-in in Wi-Fi, what comes to your mind?
Yeah, there's a lot of complexity with a Wi-Fi deployment. So you have a lot of the configuration, installation, and support. A lot of that's often software driven these days. So when you select a vendor for building out a certain deployment, if you consider using a different vendor for another deployment, you now have to sort of relearn and re-understand what those different nuances between them are. So oftentimes what you'll find is that once you select a vendor, there's a lot of the synergies that create you to keep using that same vendor, and it can create a situation where you're sort of stuck using that one vendor. But there are different vendors that we use that have a little bit more open models where we can, slot in different hardware manufacturers to run on their software, which helps alleviate some of that feeling of being locked in.
Great. Which leads me to my next question about, this whole concept of a single pane of glass or vendor freedom. What does it mean in your day-to-day?
Yeah, so for us, when we think about the single pane of glass, we're thinking about how do we interact with these systems from a support and configuration standpoint. The more that you can aggregate the way that you interact with these different systems into one interface, that's what I think of when I think of single pane of glass. So some of these different software providers will sort of allow you to bundle that with different aspects of the fiber to the home. So you have your OLT, ONT, and then your Wi-Fi on top of that. So having those systems kind of interact together and be able to be supported in one interface is what I think of when I think of single pane of glass.
Yeah, very useful. My last question is, if you had a magic wand, what technology or service would you add to become more successful?
Yeah. Yeah, this was a tricky question to think about. I do think that there's a lot of different things that you might say here, but one of the things I thought about was the software tools, right? When we look at that, there's a lot of different tools that you need to use to operate your business, right? You have the billing, IVR, OSS, the network and Wi-Fi piece, like we were just talking about, inventory, asset tracking, project management. So traditionally, a lot of these systems are all separate. Some of them might be combined in various ways or interact with each other, but it creates this complex web. So, if I had a magic wand, maybe what I'd do is have one perfect piece of software that just did it all in one spot and tied together beautifully. But, I think you could answer this question in a lot of ways, but that might be one of them.
Yeah, thank you. This was great. So I really want to appreciate your insights and sharing your views and your time today. So folks, this is a wrap. Until next episode, please don't forget to like, share, and comment. And until next episode, thank you very much.